anything that you think would be helpful for us to hear, just kind of the experience of kids worried about COVID, not worried about it, worried about having to go online, or, you know, just kind of how school feels with knowing that there are still people who are, you know, sick here and there, or that, you know, just as a world, we're still dealing with this. How does that feel as a kid?
I feel like a part of it is the fact that, like, a lot of things aren't necessarily clear to, like, the entire student body or to all the teachers, because hearing, like, I don't know, like, as, like, your main response is kind of stressful. And things like walking through the hallways, like, middle school hallways are, like, pretty small, you know, or, like, even high school hallways, it's hard to break out of those habits to go, like, one way, or, like, it takes, an especially long time to, like, get to your class if you're taking all of, like, the one-way halls. And it's just things like that that are, like, different and hard to get used to.
Yeah.
And all of the student body, like, does it. And even, like open lunch, like, how for juniors and seniors, like, it's easier because you can just leave. But for, like, the kids that, don't have cars or anything, they stand outside during open lunch, and they're just, like, outside for the entire time. So it's, like, it's worrisome because when it gets cold out, like, I don't know, like, what you guys there. And I just feel like the guidelines aren't necessarily clear. Like, a friend of mine, she was just quarantined because of close contact, but her siblings also go to, like, the middle schools and, like, the Sioux Falls elementary schools, but, like, they aren't quarantined. And so it's all, I feel like the rules and regulations are just, like, confusing at this point.
The quarantine is something people are just starting to deal with a little bit more, and that's when, if someone is sick, they kind of review it to see who a close contact is. If you're a close contact, and then to a close contact, probably like those siblings you're just talking about, then you're not going to have to quarantine. But it's really complex, and I'm sure it's good to think about that from your student perspective, because it's confusing for the adults, and we have people who are really, really good at it now, but to just kind of see it from a student perspective, or, you know, as parents of a student, and you kind of don't know how all that works, that might be something that we should communicate more clearly to kids. So that's a really good point, Raheel.
And I was going to actually piggyback off that, because I had the same thing, and I think a lot of kids are starting to worry about that kind of thing if one actually tests positive for COVID, because I know somebody who did a couple days ago, and then somebody who was in close contact was quarantined again. And I just had a few questions. I'm like, so this person got quarantined because he was close contact, but I know another person that hangs out with that person every day, or is in the same class or group, whatever, and they didn't get quarantined. They're not referred as to close contact. And when I ask teachers about, you know, that kind of thing, they don't really know at all. Not at all, but they're kind of confused about it as well. So yeah, just like the uneasiness of it is a little worrisome.
Yeah, that's good for us to hear, because that's something that we can make sure that kind of in a student-friendly way we might provide some better information. You know, we have this big plan that we have on our website, and, you know, I'm pretty sure most kids haven't read the plan. Just saying, you know, not that you wouldn't be interested in that, but probably not your first priority. But there are some things that we could probably put in some easier ways for kids to know and understand. Because I think, you know, just as cold and flu season comes around, you've all had, you know, an illness probably here or there where you've been out of school for a few days. This looks and feels different because kids are out a little longer, and then you're not sure, well, were they sick or were they quarantined? And some of those things, you know, we don't get to tell because of privacy things, but I'm sure that raises some question marks for all of you. So we'll think about that with the people at your schools and see if we can help. Avery?
I kind of had, like, a similar situation where I knew someone who, like, got COVID, and then one of their friends was, like, still coming to school. And I know it's kind of worrisome for a lot of people, because a lot of us don't want to get quarantined like from a close contact, or like get it. We're really careful, but then some people aren't, especially with like homecoming around the corner. We don't want to be gone for 2 weeks. And so I was kind of like discussing this with my friends because we were like kind of nervous just because we knew that they weren't going to quarantine themselves and take like the responsible action, but then we also didn't want to have to like be the people who were like, hey, like they should probably not be here if they're showing symptoms. So I don't know, maybe there could be like a forum or something where students could go and like they wouldn't have to go and talk to the principal or like the teacher, but they could say, hey, just worried, like wanted to check in about this to ease some students who might be more shy or didn't want to speak up to nerves.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's something that, we've been talking a lot about as adults, because the quarantine piece is one of the hardest things, because none of us want kids out of school, particularly when they're healthy, but yet that's been one strategy that's been recommended. And so we're looking at what does the guidance say? Is there anything that we should consider? So if Avery's wearing a mask and Nick's wearing a mask, is that enough to reduce close contact so that we wouldn't need to quarantine or shorter? So we're looking at all of that, because that's a frustrating part. And usually when you're sick, you're maybe out, a week would be a really long time. So this 14-day period feels like a super long time. And to keep kids learning, we don't like that part. But yet, most kids are still able to come to school right now, and so that's important too. What other thoughts do you have to share with us about just kind of existing in the midst of all of this?
It is kind of hard, like especially like if you do want to get involved and you want to like go to the games and things like that, and you see that like Avery said, like people aren't necessarily holding themselves accountable that way, and when you go to like large events like that, it's especially hard to like know who's close contact and who's not.
Yeah.
And there just needs to be like a more like organized process that, like when it comes to that. So
yeah, the events and the activities are hard. Nick, what were you gonna say?
So we had our homecoming game on Friday, and there were a ton of people there who were supposed to be quarantined or who had even siblings who had tested positive. And they were just at the game. And there were a ton of people there also without masks. I know that's not something that we're probably going to end up mandating, but it should be something that we should be taking a closer look at. Because I ended up yelling at probably 30 people to put their masks on.
Good for you.
Getting in fights.
Yeah. Well, we don't want you to get in a fight, but that peer thing is probably going to become more powerful than even adults. We could say require in our community and in our world. There are people who will fight more if we say required and just prove a point and not wear them. So we feel like we had really good response where most people were wearing the masks. But when I go on a diet, I'm really good for the first few days, and then 3 weeks later I may not be as great as I was those first few days. That's kind of human nature. So we're trying to think about how do we get people to do this over a really long period of time, and that's hard. So if you have ideas about that, let your principals know or let us know, because that's going to be something we're going to probably continue to deal with, even if we said required. Because what I don't want to do is suspend, a student because they don't have a mask on and then keep them out for more time out of the classroom. That's kind of our adult problem with that. And you know how it is at a football game or a big activity for your leaders to see in that big sea of kids, who's supposed to be there and who's not. That's a hard thing for us to deal with too, but people don't want to have the risk of being sent home for 2 weeks either, or of getting the virus. So that's good insight for us, Nick. I appreciate that. Anything else?
I think that one thing. Sorry. I think that one thing that would be really helpful is if there was some, I don't know how we could do this, or some incentive for wearing a mask at big games, whichever, you could do almost like a school versus school thing for big football games. If Roosevelt has more people wearing a mask, then they I don't know, for us for volleyball games, when we get a certain amount of blocks, we get like donuts for something at Bag of Boy. If we could partner with some local business to like say like, hey, here's some like $1 off coupon that we could give out to whichever school is wearing more masks. To like, one, you're promoting people being at events, and then two, you're also promoting mask wearing, which I think it would go well at like my school anyways, because it would really make the people who are like, maybe I should wear them, maybe I shouldn't, then see, you know what, I'm going to do it because I want to win this.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll talk about that. Millions for masks. Maybe we could get somebody.
Like, even if you worked with, like, even if you worked with like those activities and such, and say like, oh, if you come in wearing a mask, like, you won't have to pay like $3 to get in. Instead, you'll have to pay $2. You know, like just things like that. Yeah. And I feel like I feel like there just needs to be more understanding at the seriousness of like wearing your mask and why it's important. And if we could like I don't know if it's allowed, but just like release like progress reports for each school to understand how many positive cases that there are, and like understand like the seriousness that like why wear masks. Because I get questions like when I say like, oh, it's expected that you wear your mask, and I get questions that are like, well, if everyone is wearing their mask, then why do I need to? Because that just seems safe. And I'm like, well, you need to understand that holding yourself accountable, it's thinking of yourself and also thinking of others, and that just, we need to have like that more like collaboration and understanding as to why it's important.
Yeah, you guys are so smart. See, if people just hear from kids and they hear how reasonable you are way ahead of many of the adults. You know, one of the things with the numbers piece is we've also tried to be really careful with people's privacy, because if you're that one or two people at your school and you're out and people then kind of know that was you, there's some real fear from some people, and probably less as more people actually have the virus. But initially it's that, you know, everybody's going to know it's me, people are going to be afraid, or it's, you know, kind of that balance of medical privacy meets school reality. So that's part of the reason why we haven't shared some of that, is because we're also trying to balance, you know, people's privacy. So those are all super good ideas, and I love what you just said too about people taking personal responsibility, because that's what a lot of this is. And you know, we can't always make another person do that, but we hope that people will do that. So these are some good ideas for us. I'm going to go around to each of you and see if you have one last parting thought or idea, words of wisdom, or just things that you're really proud about maybe, or things that you think people should just know about how great kids are kind of handling this whole thing. So I'm going to start with Megan. Megan, do you have some words that you'd like to share as just kind of your last comment?
I don't think so.
Are you doing okay in the virtual academy? You happy you're there?
Well, I would rather be in school.
Yeah.
It's not that bad to do the virtual instead of being at school.
Good.
So.
And you know, it's never forever, and those are some of the things that you've done right now, and we're glad that you're able to stay safe and to be an online learner with us, and you're still in Sioux Falls Public School, so that is great. David, what about you?
For me, I would probably say just the learning experience, like as we go, because we're all learning this COVID because it's new together, and trying to figure out new ways that we can prevent this stuff, and especially all the ideas that are coming from, you know, students and teachers, and trying to help to make a school a safer place, or whatever has to happen so that the risk of catching COVID goes down, is a lot higher. And I say, I'm proud for the students and everybody trying to work together to do that.
Good job. All right, Nick, what are your parting thoughts?
I like to, when we talk about transparency, because right now a lot of the students are in the dark about like even just releasing the numbers every day would be nice to know, so we could, we also, my friends and I were talking about like just even signing something so that if we do test positive, then our name could get released, and then that way everyone around us who's like, oh yeah, I was around Nick and he tested positive, so I'm going to take this more seriously, and I can go and quarantine myself.
Great. Avery, what about you?
I think that it's really important that we just make sure our leaders in school are really encouraging like their younger peers to wear masks, and that will really make the most difference. If we see like especially our seniors wearing masks like correctly and at extracurricular activities, that would make a world of difference.
Yeah, you are the example, and I still say kids will listen to each other more than they will sometimes to adults, so that's a great point. Raheel?
For me, I also think it's important to like explain to those underclassmen like this is how it's going to be right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can miss out on your high school experience, because it's different, but it's still here, and that's the important part. And even like for you, like I think it's great that like you took the initiative to like ask us, because students aren't necessarily like getting a say in like what's happening right now. And I feel like it's important that, like, yeah, we're here too. Like, we want to be able to feel safe as well. So,
yeah, good job, Mabel.
Yeah. So I feel like my little brother, he just entered the 6th grade, and when I was in the 6th grade, like I'd always come home like, oh my God, I just did this today and stuff like that. And he feels like he's not having that big of an experience because of COVID, like having to wear masks and stuff like that. But I do definitely think that that wearing masks and everything, it's like it's not comfortable sometimes, and you just want to take it off. But I do feel like the teachers are trying to do their best, because like they have like tables at the end of the class where you can take off your mask for like 5 minutes and then get back to work. So
yeah. Good. Well, you are all delightful, and this is why we wanted to have this conversation, and this hopefully will spur some new ideas and new things for us to think about. And I think one of the hardest things about COVID for everybody is that it's not like anything that we've dealt with that has kind of an ending point. None of us know, when is this going to be over? And whether you're an adult or a child or a teenager right now, it's just kind of that not having an ending point that I think is hard. But we're doing well, and I'm so glad you are all making the best of this and doing your part to be a leader. And sounds like you've had a really positive attitude, and so that goes a long way. So proud of you, and thanks for doing this, and I look forward to seeing you at your schools.